is sometimes about politics, but when politics, comes to the fore, they will still say it's all about the economy. And we have with us this morning, well, he's also a politician too. He's contested as a presidential candidate, Mr. Tokwe Fashua. He's prominently more known, I would think, as an economist. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Why you prefer your label as an economist and a politician?
Economist is simple, and you can do a lot of things. Politicians have a baggage that they carry around.
So you have one now,
a baggage of distrust. Yeah, luckily I didn't get that baggage because there's a way I played my my own politics. I focused on the issues. I focused on the economy and on ideas. Thankfully, I think I was able to get away with it. But you can see that, of course, Nigerians, they do probably have a reason to distrust politicians, but not even only in Nigeria. Everywhere in the world, politicians are distrusted. So I think I'm very okay with that, the economist moniker.
Right. It's fair enough. Well, we're talking the economy right now. In July this year, the president signed the AfCFTA Act. I think it took a while, for us to finally join. We had to consider very deeply the pros and the cons of signing that particular act. But we have since signed it I don't know whether it's on the back of that, but what we currently have right now are closed borders. And we're wondering if we have actually prepared ourselves to benefit from our signing of that particular act. What are your thoughts on it?
Number one is, we oughtn't have deterred. We oughtn't have waited and be debating with ourselves. One of the biggest problems Nigerians have is that we think the world starts and ends in Nigeria. We're so
Can you blame us, though?
Enamored of ourselves.
Yes.
But look, the world is moving on. We're talking about Rwanda now assembling cards. South Africa has been doing that since forever. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why we didn't want to join was we're saying, we don't have the infrastructure. We will not be able to compete. We should have been the ones driving that process. So if you don't have the infrastructure, go get the infrastructure. If you think you have a big disadvantage, then get serious with your economy. So you have to get serious with your economy and do the things that other people are doing in order to compete. Because again, we live in a globalized world. People are competing everywhere. Every country for himself or herself, and that's what it is.
But there were more concerns, though. In fairness,
say, we're big and people will be dumping stuff on us. Do you know what would happen if we didn't join? Now, it would have been just we and Eritrea, number one. Number two would be that all those countries that are producing around, because everybody's repositioning, they will besiege our borders. So we would have had, it was going to be like a Brexit gone wrong. It would be Niger exit without having joined, because again, all our borders are besieged. You know what's going on now with the border closure? What's going on now? How many videos have you seen of rice smuggling? You know what I'm saying? People on Okada carrying, come on. And my article this weekend, by God's grace, in Premium Times and Daily Trust, would be Nigeria's rice bubble. If you remember, there's this thing about the tulip bubble in the Netherlands in the 1700s and so on. When the price of tulip just suddenly started going up. I'm saying that Nigerians, as people, and even, Nigerians are paying too much for rice already. It's overrated. And even the government is spending too much on rice already, or even all these interventions. It's like, rice is all we want to do now. So if we hadn't joined AfCFTA, it would have been we and Eritrea, another troubled country out in the cold, and, we would have also been besieged because, we've got the numbers of people. And so all of those goods produced by small countries like Guinea-Bissau, Congo Republic, all the countries around the North Circle, people like Cameroon and all, would actually besiege us. But then we know that we got a problem with our customs.
Two things you have raised. One of the things you said initially is that Nigerians are very enamored with themselves. And you can't blame us. We're a population of,
only to
just
an
a moment,
extent,
180 million people. We have the market here. Our economy is, if not the biggest in Africa, is the biggest in sub-Saharan Africa. You say we talk about being besieged. We're already being besieged by smaller countries whose ports act as, transit areas for goods meant for our market. So didn't we have very good reason to be very concerned? Look at what is happening right now. We have closed our land borders. The smaller countries are complaining because the ports that they operate, the goods that are offloaded there, were actually meant for the Nigerian market.
Right. So again, what I'm saying is, okay, fine. We know we have that problem. We know we have the population. Well, even though I'm actually a bit, sick and tired of, hearing that stuff. The rest of the world, especially the Europeans, the Americans, even the Chinese, they see Nigeria as a big market where people are always buying stuff. So, but whose fault is it that we did not actually start producing things that we need ourselves, before we now, but we can also get stuck at that point of, oh, we're a big market, we need to protect ourselves, because we're never going to be able to protect ourselves. Like I'm even saying that even in spite of the border closure, smuggling has now been is now on a stratospheric level, and that also means that a lot, these guys in custom, are making a lot of illegal money for themselves, So we ought to have been the ones driving the process.
No, but
just as we were the ones
sorry
driving.
to interrupt you, sir.
Yes.
I do not want to hold brief for the customs, but if we are seeing those videos, I have seen some of the videos of this, people trying to smuggle rice in on motorcycles through bush paths and all, and they were stopped by the same customs which we accused. That's the reason why we're able to see the video.
You remember what's going on with the cars, right? And the customs want to start going into people's into hotels, even if you like, they may come to your house and say, "This your car was brought in." I mean, you don't probably even have a customs paper, and they say, "Well, this paper is fake." But who collected the money on it? You understand what I'm saying? Who collected the money on it? Why did they wait for this long? And what are the consequences for those people? Why are we not hearing about thousands of custom officers or former custom officers being in jail right now? Why is it the people's burden? All of a sudden, you buy a car even off the shelf in a car dealer, and they tell you that car, the customs papers are not right, and they did not pay enough. So what I'm saying is that we know we have a problem. Okay, actually, if you ask me, I even support the idea of restricting the movement of some of those things in the land borders. Mind you, that the sea borders and the air borders are still open.
Yes, they're open.
Very much so. So, but I actually do support, even if it was an experiment to see if we close this border, what would happen? Can we reduce the rate of smuggling and all that? However, remember that if AfCFTA kicks in fully, we will not be able to close any border, land, sea, or air, because there have been an agreement. It's a free trade zone. So goods and services will be able to move freely within all of those areas. So we cannot single ourselves out and say, we're so important, we're too important, we're going to close our borders. No, you can't. So I'm believing that what's going on now is like that kind of experiment to say, okay, before we finally key into the AfCFTA, let us even see let's see something close to what exactly is the value of imports and exports from Nigeria. What are we documenting and all of that? So there's really nothing too wrong in that. But again, I insist that we ought to have been the ones. Nigeria, big economy, bright people, intelligent people, well-educated and all of that. We ought to have been the ones driving the process. And the thing that we need to do, we've got this problem with corruption. If we say we don't have infrastructure, it's because a lot of the money has gone on corruption. Mm-hmm. So what are we doing about that? Are we seeing any salutary, action in that area the way we expected? I would say no, okay? We're not seeing that the way we expected. So a lot of fat cats around, people who have benefited and freed out a lot of money from the society. So that's what we see, all right? But we ought to have been the ones repositioning our infrastructure. We ought to have been the ones repositioning our manufacturing to even produce goods for the goods that we need ourselves. So look, when that AfCFTA came, we should see it as a blessing in disguise. Something to say that finally you have to sit up, face up to the brass tacks, produce, be very productive, increase productivity in your country, do what you have to do and all of that. In fact, get it going from the ground up. We're not seeing that. When we say even a lot of the so-called entrepreneurs in the country, there are people who bring things from abroad imported and then start to sell here. What we have are importers selling stuff here. What we need are producers. And in order to get production right, it's not even about bringing the machines from China or from Europe or wherever. It's about finding out how to create the machines here. So it's about starting from the ground up. We haven't started yet because it's going to be a kind of revolutionary process. But it's something that we must actually begin to start, even right from our universities, to say, okay, what can we produce ourselves? For example, we're getting about $3 billion again from the World Bank on electricity. And I've always said this. right? That look, no matter how much money we borrow from abroad to bring in huge, plants here, generating plants or whatever from maybe Siemens or General Electric, this will never solve our problem. What will solve our problem? Because in fact, if you look at it now, the discos, the production, the energy they generate cannot be sold at the rural areas because the rural people cannot afford that energy. What will solve that problem? All the universities around those rural areas, all the polytechnics should be the ones, they should take it as a project, as an experiment. So what I'm saying is, look, the kind of mobilization, the kind of revolution we need, we haven't started to feel it on the streets. So those polytechnic people, students, those university students in engineering, in electrical or whatever, are the ones that will have to go to those villages and power them up using whatever it is they can. They're going to make the mistakes. But if you don't make mistakes, how would you succeed? But we haven't started to see that. So our idea of development is still, top down. We're looking at Europe, we want to enjoy like Europe, but we don't want to suffer like Europe. In Germany, what they did after the Second World War was engineers who could power their houses. All right. In time, they gave their neighbor. In time, they gave their village. In time, the cities were, and they're now connected at the top. What we're trying to do is to bring in the energy from the top and hope it will trickle down to the villages. It's never going to work.
No, but we also know that alternative energy is something that is already in vogue right now, and it's something that the federal government is aware of. They're trying to see how they can key into it, especially for rural communities, especially because they do not need too much or a lot of electricity. What they need is, to power their bulbs and their TVs and maybe charge their handsets and things of the sort. If that is the situation, don't you think that they're already thinking in that direction?
Well, no, I don't think they're thinking in that direction. In fact, the Ministry of Energy, even under
as a rural electrification.
You know what? I've even had cause to criticize some of the work because the other time they went to Surah Market and they powered Surah Market and I said, rural. I said, well, Surah is not a rural area. Surah is right in the middle of Lagos Island, and it's fine. You can have a success in that area, but I say rural electrification is meant to be for rural proper. And I know that in the Rural Electrification Agency, they have this thing about alternative energy. But I'm saying, even under Fashola, that they decided they were going to give energy to about 9 universities. All right, and to give them 24/7 energy and all of that stuff and so on. But I couldn't see where the students were involved. You see, we don't understand that we need to be planning 20, 30 years ahead. If you don't tool those children there, if you don't put them in the center of everything and make them make mistakes where they'll make, listen, you can power by solar, you can power by mini grid, mini hydro, for example. I've seen there's one guy, I don't even know if he went to university, he was on WhatsApp the other time, and there's a stream flowing by his village, and he created a kind of a turbine and put it in that stream, and as it turns, it powers 1 or 2 or 3 bulbs. That's what we need. We're going to have to power this country from the ground up. And look, you can actually apply this to every other challenge that we have, including education and all of that. You got 30 million children on the streets, and you say there's no job in the country, when you should be mobilizing out to get out of those children out of the streets and also creating jobs for teachers. Those are jobs for teachers. All right, so in the same vein, go back to this AfCFTA. We need to be productive. We need to produce the things we need. In fact, even right now, we need to be organizing challenges or contests of people who can produce all those little stuff and so on. Now we're doing that with rice, okay? And a lot of people are going into rice and all of that, which is great, but I believe already there's a bubble on rice. If I would advise people right now, say, if you can afford not to, don't buy rice. Let the price crash. Because as the borders were closed and a lot of these things are being smuggled in, I hear that price of foreign rice is getting on for about 30,000 naira. And even the local one, per bag, and even the local one is approaching about 20,000 or more.
It's economists that made the theories now. That where demand is high, and supply is low, the price goes up, right?
I believe it's a bubble. I think the frenzy around rice, and that's what they call, narratives in society. When all the things are going to, rice. And even the phrase actually started from is that, the common man, we're always comparing a bag of rice with minimum wage, as if someone that gets minimum wage in a month, buys a bag of rice and finishes it in that month. No, a bag of rice in an average family will last 3, 4, 5, 6 months, sometimes even 12 months. You know, so we're paying, I believe that we're paying too much for rice right now. I believe that the government is even putting too much attention on rice and also spending too much in terms of intervention on rice. It's not about, life is not about rice alone. And our industrial development cannot be driven by rice. We need to also begin to think about other things that we need. For example, if you look at cars, for example, and I would say that, look, if you look at what they did in India with Tata, with which other company was that, you know, so where is the model small Nigerian car that a graduate should be able to afford at maybe 1 million naira, new car? You know, a tiny car. That's what we should start from. When Nissan was coming here, they were coming to do Nissan Patrol because their idea was they needed to compete with Toyota Prado. You know what I'm saying? So that's always the problem of starting at the top rather than from the ground up.
Okay, well, I'm sure they can learn a lesson or two from Tata Motors. But let us go to Lagos now. I think they have questions for you, gentlemen.
Well, yes, I'll just like us to add on one hand, the Russia-Africa summit, which is ongoing. I mean, opening up Africa to Russia. There's also the Japan-Africa deal. There's the China-Africa deal. I can go on and on. So while we're trying to tie up the loose ends with AfTA, the question is, what will be the implication of these deals, these agreements with other countries on AfTA, such that people are worried that, yes, we're saying free trade will be in Africa, but will that be also opening up Africa as, in quote, a dumping ground for some of these other regions?
Well, Africa already is a dumping ground in many parts of Africa. The only economies that seem to be working in Africa, partly the South African economy, and you know they've got this Dutch origin and they have this link to Europe and all of that, you know. And you can see, however, the economy is also driven almost 90% by the white people there. So they've got their own issues. You go to North Africa, the Algerian economy seems to be working a little bit, you know, and also to an extent also Egypt, yeah. And the Moroccans are positioning themselves, but they've got a very strong link with France, equally the Tunisians, you know. So part of the worry with AfCFTA is what they call the rules of origin, in terms of, okay, say, if we really want to have a free movement of goods and services within Africa, which I really believe we should, because it used to be that intra-Africa trade within African countries was about 7%. It's gone to about 15-20% now, when European Union were doing about 70% of their trade within themselves. It's about keeping the money within the family. And that's very clear, especially when you're in a crisis situation. You have to keep the money within the family and use whatever money you have to reboot yourself. Enough already, especially sub-Saharan Africa, which has been seen as a basket case, is still a basket case. Nigeria is the leader in that region, and that's why we needed to be the ones at the forefront of driving that intra-Africa trade. If we had repositioned ourselves and actually tapped into the energy of our people, by now it would be the other countries being afraid that, look, we really want to bring Nigeria into this. Those guys have too much they're producing. So now, if you now look at all of those guys coming, everybody's trying to reposition. Look at Brexit. The British people are trying to see, okay, fine, if we get out of Europe, how can we begin to continue to sell a lot of things to African, because they believe that we're net buyers of everything. The European Union came with their EPA as well, partnership agreement, and that one also was to say, okay, they said, look, we're going to also give you guys tariff-free on everything you bring into Europe. But what do we sell to Europe? Look, at the end of the day, the issue will be fine. How many tubers of yam do you need to import one computer? Right? So how many tubers of yam do you need to sell? Remember the other time that we sent tubers of yam to the US, by the time they got there, they were all dumped in the sea because they failed the phytosanitary condition, and some of them were rotting already. All right, so how many tubers of yam, how many tubers of cassava do you need to sell to buy one car from Europe, maybe one BMW? You're going to need a shipload of them. How many of those can you produce in a year? So a lot of the way we have been running our economy in sort of unthinking manner, what's holding a number of African countries is loans. In fact, the loans that were cancelled in 2006, most of these African countries are back in that debt, including ourselves. And so we have to be careful about them, actually. But however, we've got a leeway right now to actually have a good talk with ourselves and begin to see how much productivity we can get going on here. So Japan is trying to reposition. Everybody wants to continue to maintain their links with Africa in order to begin to dump stuff here, and what are those things that we should actually resist.
Well, Mr. Fashwa, we have to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Mr. Tokwe Fashwa is an economist. Well, he prefers being called an economist to being called a politician, but he did contest in the 2019 general elections for presidency. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment to take maybe your mails, I believe, your mails and your comments. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at some feedback from you. We've got Zimo. We're talking about the electoral reforms which the Senate is considering. And Zimo tweets saying the issue is not about electoral reforms. It is not about the... let me go again. The issue is not about electoral reforms. It is not about the kind of political system we have. It is about those who will run that system. The system is okay, he says. It is what runs the system that isn't. If those things work elsewhere, well, he thinks they'll fail here.
So this next one is coming from, well, his profile says New Nigerian, Paul Walshak. And it says, as part of the electoral reforms aimed at trimming down the number of political parties, it should be made illegal for one or more parties to adopt another party or their candidates for elections. It seems that is the only reason many political parties exist. That's his opinion there, Paul Walshak.
Well, still on the same matter, Wale Aguda, official Aguda says, why are we fixated on components of the electoral system that contradict effectiveness? The argument for even 5 political parties is illogical against the costs for just 2. We must go mobile. Voting by electronic means must now be seriously considered. But that's Wale Aguda's comment here.
5G for the win.
And Ms. Behu says the committee should also look at the possibility of setting criteria for political parties to be listed on the ballot before the elections. Yes, they want them to look at conditions before you are listed on the ballot for the elections. But what do you make of this?
Well, we will see how all of this play out. Well, that is the show today. Well, yeah, we appreciate your comments. You can keep them coming, but we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a good day.
I'll keep them coming. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf. Bye for now.